So, Teddy, I remember last week we were talking about how loud the intro was. That we just had our brand new intro here at Fourth and Frames, the fantasy football podcast, or fantasyandframes.com. I didn't really hear it until now because I guess my headphones had been off the entire time. And now I can barely hear. So that is a great way to kick off a podcast. I just got to say.
You know what it just reminded me of, by the way? That intro, that sounds like the opening of like a Monday Night Raw. Like, I feel like we just opened up a wrestling show. Like, that is so hype. That's why I think I've been so drawn to our new intro.
I love it. I'll have to tweak it a little bit more, but I think we're on the right path, gentlemen. So like I said, I'm Jorge Edwards, and welcome to Fourth and Frames, the fantasy football podcast for fantasyandframes.com. With me, I got my guys. I got Teddy. I got Nate. And we are here to talk about some NFC East, gentlemen. First of all, let me just go around the frames and just check how you all doing. Teddy, how are you today, sir?
I'm doing well, man. It's been quite the week. I had the scare today of OU and Texas wanting to join the SEC, and I can't really imagine South Carolina having to play either one of them every single season. So please no. And other than that, doing well, keeping on, especially with our team previews we've got going out every day.
Yeah, 64 and 32 days. We're looking forward to getting all those articles out to you so you can get ready for fantasy football draft season. Nate Markham, how are you, sir?
Doing good as well. Teddy and I broke off from football, and we did hockey talk today, baseball talk. He just mentioned wrestling, and it's wrestling for the Midwesterners. There's two S's, maybe three, and a couple I's, and a tilde over the R.
It's like how the youth spell thick.
Exactly.
A bunch of C's.
Exactly. So how you spell thick.
Yeah, there it is.
By comparison.
Exactly.
Very nice. So again, thank you very much for tuning in. And as the title that's flashing at the bottom of the screen says, we're covering the NFC East. Now, of course, if you want to read more about the players that we think are fantasy relevant in the NFC East for 2021, head over to fantasyandframes.com today and check out our 4-eyed team previews. We have everybody in the NFC East currently up through the Dallas Cowboys IDP players, which should go out either later tonight or super early tomorrow morning, because I have been procrastinating like a stupid person. Apparently, I can't go on vacation. Apparently, that's what I learned. I cannot go on vacation and be productive. So,
how dare you didn't work on your vacation?
I know. I honestly feel bad because everybody here at Fantasy and Frames has been going crazy nonstop, pumping out content for all of you to digest and consume. And so I'm grateful for that. And all you 4-eyed fans out there, thank you very much for your patronage. Before we get into that, a lot of the things you're going to hear from us today, a lot of the information, a lot of the stats come from our good friends over at fantasydata.com. You've heard for weeks now, we're plugging, using our promo code Fantasy and Frames to get 20% off of your monthly bill. Look, $18 a month. If you're interested in learning more about fantasy football or the NBA or whoever else, if you're into content creation or you're just getting ready for your fantasy football drafts and you want the little added edge, hey, $18, try it for a month. See if you like it. If it works out well, great, fantastic. If it doesn't, well, you lost $18, and I'm very sorry. Right. But you know what? You could have been paying $20, but you didn't because you used the promo code Fantasy and Frames. So just check that out. And so with that being said, let's just get into it today. Let's talk about the very first team here in the NFC East, the Washington football team. And yes, I'm biased, but you know what? That's just how it's going to be. And let's just do this, Teddy. I know you've been gearing up for this all day. I saw that your tweet earlier this morning that you're looking forward to talking about this. Nate's, waiting with bated breath right here. J.D. McKissic. In terms of half PPR or full PPR, I think we can all agree in a non-PPR setting, he really has no fantasy value. So let's think about things from a fantasy football perspective, from an NFL perspective. They bring in Ryan Fitzpatrick. They draft all these fast wide receivers who can stretch the field. Antonio Gibson was a converted wide receiver / running back from college over to the pros. There's talk about him getting work in the receiving game. There's Logan Thomas, who emerged out of nowhere last year at tight end in the receiving game. Why is J.D. McKissic viable in either a half or a full PPR league, Teddy?
So here's why. And my offseason baby has been J.D. McKissic, second to only Tyler Boyd of the Bengals. We'll get to him in a few weeks. So for J.D. McKissic, my big thing with him, I am very aware that last season's not going to happen again. Okay. I understand that was the ceiling of ceilings for him. That was J.D. McKissick's Sistine Chapel. Okay, that was his perfect season, right? Perfect storm. Everything went well for him. Here's my thing with when you're looking at backup running backs, especially in this case, J.D. McKissick. And I mentioned this on the Hayden Hurst mental health podathon that we were a part of, and we had a blast being there. Thank y'all for including us. Very important. Go check a recording of it if you can find it. J.D. McKissick last season had 106 targets, right? New quarterback. I understand that we have Fitzmagic. We have potentially someone Nate's going to talk about under center. If he has 40 fewer targets this season than he did last season, if you take away 40 targets, he is going to be the running back 6. Here, he would have been the running back 6 as far as how many targets he had over the entire season in the NFL, right? And that usage is still going to be viable with where he's being drafted. In a best ball league I did yesterday, I know we mainly deal with fantasy football with dynasty and redraft. I got him in like the 17th round. Like, it was insane. With just the amount of time that he's going to be on the field. Their defense is fantastic, is going to get them the ball. They're going to be on offense a lot, even if Antonio Gibson, evolves in the passing game more. Even if Curtis Samuel has some times where he's in the backfield like he used to do with Carolina. I do not care with the price of J.D. McKissick that even if you just almost – actually, if you look at it now, if you cut his usage in half, he would still be a top 14 running back in receptions. And that's just if he saw 53 targets. So for me, he's going to get the target share.
Are you kind of concerned that you're going to have to pick and choose the weeks that you anticipate Washington being down in games where they're going to have a negative game script that he's going to have to be involved? And is that going to give you the anxiety and the gut-wrenching sensation of trying to figure out how this great defense and potentially more explosive offense is, losing games to certain teams?
For normal people, yes, you will probably have that that heartburn and acid reflux at kickoff. Not me. He's on my flex spot. He's got a reservation on that flex spot for the season. He's not riding the pine on the insane Clowney posse. No.
You are keeping the faith, sir.
Yeah, I am.
No, cool. Totally get it. Totally understand that thought process there. Whether they will be down in games, that's all about their defense. We'll find out. It's a very exciting time in Washington. A lot of potential upside, a lot of playmakers, a lot of field stretchers. And Teddy, sticking with you here, if there's one playmaker that I think you, amongst all of us here, are super excited about for Washington, is the addition of wide receiver out of the University of North Carolina, Dyami Brown. This guy, I want to say, in the ACC last year, led the league in receiving yards, or the conference, in receiving yards per target. His speed is unheralded coming out of college. I mean, really a huge home run threat here. So that being said, we cover dynasty, we cover redraft. We're going to be pushing into best ball in the coming months. If you had to pick one particular format to roster him in versus, looking at redraft or best ball for this season, which format would you want to have him in?
I would still feel safer taking him in best ball leagues. And I feel like that's a cop-out answer just because obviously you get the players' best games, in your lineups. But we're just seeing so much happening with the Washington football team's offense this year with the veteran quarterback, with Fitzmagic, with Antonio Gibson kind of emerging still, them still figuring that out. Curtis Samuel's in town. Scary Terry McLaurin is still, progressing and growing. So I think that they're still kind of figuring out their offensive identity. And I think Dyami Brown is going to fit into that. I just don't know that I'm willing to – you won't have to pay a large price for him as far as draft capital or anything. Like, he's not going to be going – high in drafts at all. So, I mean, it would probably be like a late round flyer, which I guess, at that point you could do worse, but I'm not expecting it to click this first year, especially with so many mouths to feed. I do think he adds a lot of flexibility to their offense and just the creativity that Riverboat Ron has shown in Carolina and in Washington, I think that they're going to be having a lot of fun drawing up plays with Miami. But for me, it's got to be best ball for now.
Fair enough. Nate, you agree with that?
Yeah, I mean, what's the maximum target share he's going to occupy this year if you have McLaurin and you have Curtis Samuel? I mean, 14% target share, that just from the passing volume doesn't equate into redraft wide receiver 1, 3 or 4 numbers. But in the best ball, sure. Because like you said, Sam Howell, if they could somehow not lose enough games, but get him, that combination would be fantastic. Because
that'd be awesome.
Wonderful.
Corey wouldn't be happy for the next 12 months, but
they just trade away. But yeah, I mean, he's definitely impressive. It'd be nice to see going forward for this football team.
Nice. Now let's round out another pertinent question here for the Washington football team. Let's go to the IDP landscape for all you IDP people out there. Landon Collins, coming off of an Achilles injury. This guy has been in the top 10 in terms of fantasy point game performance and fantasy points scored amongst defensive backs, which I want to say for like eons. That's how long he's been playing, and that's how good he's been from a fantasy perspective. But we saw with his injury last year the emergence of Cameron Curl come on at the strong safety position. For what it's worth, friends over at ourlads.com, they're putting together the rosters here, letting you know who's where. And they currently have Cameron Curl slid in, whatever grammar term.
Slotted in?
There we go. Slotted in. Thank you.
Yeah.
Slotted in.
Slotted in. Where's my English degree? I'll bring it over here. Might need to torch it.
There we go.
For that.
Anyhow, they have Cameron Curl as the strong safety there, and Landon Collins as the free safety. That's interesting in and of itself, because we've always seen Landon Collins crowd the line of scrimmage, being more of a run stopper. But here in Washington, there's not a lot of debate going back and forth between, is it Cameron Curl or is it Landon Collins a strong safety? Because as it stands right now, Landon Collins isn't a factor because he hasn't been cleared for team activities because he's still rehabbing and coming back from that Achilles injury. Right. So from an IDP standpoint, I want to say, according to Sleeper, using IDP 1-2-3 fantasy point scoring, Landon Collins is in the top 20.
Yeah.
In terms of ADP position, I don't know his exact number, but he's definitely considered a top 20 defensive back.
He's 17.
17. There we go. And Cameron Curl, I think we saw was 25 a little bit later.
Right around that. 24, 25.
24, 25. What are your thoughts on Landon Collins in terms of an IDP value, first of all, going forward? Let's start with that.
Man, the term value kind of is hard right there, because I want to say at 17, you could tell me he was going to play 14 games, I'd be fine with that. The problem is because you look at 2018, 12 games. He still finished as a DB, but that was a DB3. Some of those numbers were down just a little bit. But you go fast forward to one more season of 2019. He was, second in the most snaps in the box. And there's that there's a direct correlation. The more snaps you have where you're at the line of scrimmage from a safety perspective versus, say, a corner or any other defensive back, obviously the likelihood that you're going to have some splash plays is relevant. That same year, he was third in the most solo tackles. He was top 12 in pressures. He's a legit DB1 if healthy. I know Achilles is progressing better. We say that there's prognosis is getting better with PRPs, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, and PTSD over Achilles injuries this week, though, with Cam Akers.
Exactly. And then like from a baseball standpoint, Mike Soroka, who's a pitcher, he came back early and he's gone again. Achilles has to be by far, I think, one of the more tricky to figure out. I love Landon Collins, and you said eons and eons. He's 27 years old. Doesn't that seem so? I mean, he seems like he should be 30, 31 by now. But I mean, he hasn't been. He played 6 games last year, 15 the year before. He misses occasional games, but if you told me I had to take him as DB 17 overall, I don't know if I'd take him. I might have to pass. I really like Curl at 24, but for the same reason. Because if I'm passing on Landon Collins, it's probably because I'm a little hesitant that he's going to have the full season, he's going to recover. And if that's the case, then Cameron Curl should be an easy DB2, especially with that defense.
Fair enough. Jeremy Noble here on YouTube is asking, is Chase Young a top 10 IDP player Also, dope hats. I'm going to go in reverse here. First of all, thank you for the compliment of the dope hats you can get at VeridianGlobal.com, as well as to come to see us at the Fantasy Football Expo in Canton, Ohio, the 15th of August. We will have some of these hats to give away, so make sure you come visit our booth for that. Now, getting back to Chase.
It's lacking a hat.
Well, you know what? Maybe you should go to Veridian Global and get yourself a hat. Or
hey, Jeremy, go to Veridian Global and buy me a hat and send it to me. Please.
Very nice.
Petition the fans.
There you go. But anyhow, getting back to your questions, Chase Young, a top 10 IDP. Chase Young, I believe, is a top 10 defensive lineman.
Sure.
I think the linebacker position and the strong safety position are just too deep to say that Chase Young can climb in there from a fantasy points per game perspective and take away anything from any of those guys right now. But from a defensive lineman, if you have a defensive lineman dedicated position in your IDP leagues, Chase Young, hands down, would love to have him. And what did he say? Sure, happy Hanukkah. Yes, happy Hanukkah to you. No, that doesn't work out.
Am I getting it until December?
Yeah. Is that what you're saying, Jeremy?
What, are you saying you want a gift and you want to tell him when to buy it for you? That's kind of rude, Nate.
I don't care. He
knows. He's the one who said it. He's the one stirring the pot right now.
I'll take what I can get.
Anyhow, yes. So Chase Young, I think one of the things that makes Chase Young so interesting, and I wrote about this in my Washington football team IDP team preview, is that had he been on any other team where he was the sole focus of this defense, I would be a little bit hesitant having him in my top 5, let alone top 10 at defensive lineman / edge. But the pieces around him, whether it's Montez Sweat on the other side, Deron Payne up the middle, there's so many talented people along that defensive line that can just force double teams. The likelihood that Chase Young is going to get one-on-one opportunities with an offensive tackle are so high, and he's so good at beating these offensive tackles based off of his win percentage. Given his situation where he's at, yeah, he's definitely a top 5, top 10 pick. I say that in reverse: top 10, definitely top 5 pick in IDP leagues at defensive line.
Sure,
that's just my take there. Okay. Let's go to Dallas. I'm sure my wife is happy about this. And let me just get this out of the way right now. Last year, I have a confession, folks. I was a Michael Gallup truther. And I have a confession too. This year, I'm still a Michael Gallup truther. One last year is based off of logic until CeeDee Lamb entered the picture. And one this year is based off of being stubborn because I refuse to quit Michael Gallup.
Wait till next year. Wait till next year when he's on a different team, and then you can jump all in, and you'll be even happier. You'll really, really actually get pay dividends.
You mean when he's on Green Bay, when Aaron Rodgers is no longer on Green Bay, and had Aaron Rodgers just waited another year, he would have had a valid wide receiver too. Not that
we're predicting so many things.
I know. There's so much stuff going on.
There's so much.
We need a breaking news drop because this is wild.
We really do.
Making news.
I'm sure Adam Schefter will probably be the one to drop it right on like Packers anniversary day or something.
Exactly.
Seems to go after them at their most vulnerable time.
It's like we called it Michael Gallup to Green Bay. Anyhow, we're talking about Michael Gallup in Dallas as the third wide receiver here. Last year in half PPR scoring, he averaged 9.9 fantasy points per game. Obviously in PPR, that was a little bit more. I want to say that was like 11 points per game or close to 12 fantasy points per game. That being said, I think it's pretty clear that CeeDee Lamb and Amari Cooper, based off of their work with Dak last year, were the 1 and 1A in this receiving core. I wish we would have had an opportunity to see what life would be like with Michael Gallup and Dak Prescott in this offense was last year, but we didn't get that because obviously with Dak's injury. Mm-hmm. Going forward this year, Nate, let's start with you.
Sure.
And before we get to one of the questions we had strategically planned in our rundown, what are your thoughts on just Michael Gallup as a value in terms of ADP?
I think the value is there. The value. The problem I have is that you're going to ask me a question of, hey, can he be a wide receiver 3? My answer is yes. I think by season end, he can be a wide receiver 3. I think the problem that we all run into is any given week you don't want to start him because it's not going to be 11 and a half, 13, 12, 14, 12, 11, 10. It's going to be 17, 6, 18, 4, 17, 3. And I don't like that type of output. If you look at last year, what he did, I mean, I love it if I'm clairvoyant, I can predict it.
I was about to say, it sounds like it's going to be either every odd week or every even week. So, I mean, I don't know why you're complaining, Nate.
Except unless it's every odd and I pick every even, and then you lose.
Right.
Because, I mean, let's look at like what he's done as far as target share. If you go back to 2019, he possessed 20, he got 21% target share. Go to 2020, he would drop down to 17%. Obviously, that's the addition of CeeDee Lamb. If we take a full Dak season, and at this point, I'm kind of clairvoyant, I'm extrapolating, I'm doing a lot of the things we're not supposed to do, but at the same time, there is a process behind this. If you look at 18% target share from 5,100 yards of Dak was what we can say is a kind of that ceiling season, which is what he was on pace to do last year anyway. I mean, that's a 68 reception, 110 targets for about 1,000, and then the unsticky one is the touchdown. We don't know what that's going to be. Let's say 4 touchdowns. That puts him as wide receiver 28 based on full PPR, according to last year's numbers. If it's 20%, let's say that he just happens to, because Matt Harmon on his, in a tweet from, I don't remember. It was a couple of weeks ago. It feels like that I saw it talking about his separation on deep passes and just as a whole, one of the better receivers on the team. Let's say he gets up to 20%. You're talking 75 receptions for 1,100 yards. And let's say that's 5 touchdowns. That's the wide receiver 23 then overall. So now you're putting him as a wide receiver 2. His ADP is what, 50? So, I mean, that, if there's any value, that's to be had. But we're talking ceilings. So I feel like I'm circling, not landing.
No, you're setting up the next question perfectly.
Oh, good.
Which is we're talking ceilings and we're talking best outcome, but at the end of the day, come draft day, right? And you're in your home league and you have in the 6th round, 7th round, Michael Gallup still on the board. Are you more comfortable taking him in redraft at that price, or is he another best ball only candidate in your opinion, Nate?
Well, I think I answered that by the whole every other week best ball scenario. But it wasn't by intention. I mean, I think he has value in both. But man, the best ball scenario, those weeks that he does blow up, that could be every other week wide receiver 2.
Fair enough. Let's go to the running back situation in Dallas. Last time I checked, Ezekiel Elliott, is still good. A lot of people like
for some reason, fantasy doesn't like to agree all the time, but
no,
let's remember, guys, he's good.
He loses like 4 rushing attempts, 6 rushing attempts from last year or 2019 to 2020, and everybody's like, oh well, his attempts are going down. Like, yeah, but his receptions are staying steady, and like you look at his combined yardage, he's still getting you over 1,000 yards. Look at last year, he would have had you 1,100 yards and change. The year before that, he had 1,700 combined total yards. The year before that, he had 2,000 combined total yards. Like, right. I don't care whether the yards are coming from his rushing or coming from his receiving, as long as the yards are just coming here. Period. Right. That's the fantasy point. You're getting fantasy points.
Yeah. Look at his touchdown. Look at touchdowns inside the 5. How that regression was so bad. It has to be. You add in 2 All-Pros back to that offensive line. You have to assume. Again, we're assuming the touchdowns have to jump back up a little bit, and then where does he land? I mean,
right? No, exactly. Like I want to say 3 years ago, he was 19.2 fantasy points per game. Year after that was 17. Like he had 12.9 fantasy points per game and half PPR scoring last year, with his quarterback out for 12 weeks. Like,
right?
Okay. I mean, it's for me. I'm looking at this Dallas and looking at the Dallas team and looking at the offense, and I'm kind of like, you get a mulligan, and you get a mulligan, and you get a mulligan. Everyone gets a mulligan, except for Blake Jarwin and Dalton Schultz, because I'm not sold that there is a viable tight end option there in Dallas. If you want to hear more about that, or not, because I didn't write about that, head over to fantasyandframes.com today and check out our team preview for the Dallas Cowboys offense. So that being said, okay, Tony Pollard, okay, he has some receiving chops to him. Do we care about Tony Pollard from a fantasy standpoint, Teddy?
You know who I'd rather have than Tony Pollard? J.D. McKissick. And here's why. No, I'm just kidding. So Tony Pollard, at this point, you're honestly just kind of hoping for an injury, which is terrible to say. But I don't think that you're just taking him as insurance, right? That's about all that Pollard is going to bring your team, and you're just kind of hoping that maybe you'll get some value out of him later. In the kind of realm of backups, he's in the middle, kind of top middle.
All right. Let's go now. It's finishing up the Dallas Cowboys talk here. And again, folks, remember, if you're just joining us, if we're not covering a topic with Dallas that you want to hear about, I guarantee you it's been written about over at fantasyandframes.com in our 4i team preview section, where we cover both offensive players and individual defensive players. And speaking of individual defensive players, Micah Parsons taken in the first round in the NFL draft here in 2020. Jabril Cox, another linebacker, taken in the 5th round here in 2021. Excuse me, not 2021. Are these the heir apparents to Jalen Smith and Leighton Vander Esch from an IDP perspective here, Nate?
Without just saying yes immediately, I think that the question is going to have to go into what their future holds for Jalen Smith. With one of the two, yes. They turned down the 5th-year option on Vander Esch. I think that's just the sign of things to come. They're hoping to get a full what they're hoping and what he's hoping is they're hoping for him to give them the productive year that he wants and needs to get a productive contract. And then they can say, hey, we got him on his best way out. And then they will, readdress the linebacking core, or not readdress. They'll go with what they have right now, like you just mentioned. If he's hurt, then we still know that same answer. They're still not going to bring him back. I'm intrigued by Jalen Smith. He's still only 25. His contract extends through 2025. I have a hard time not believing that he's a centerpiece still, especially with Micah Parsons having a lot more of that pass rush pedigree more so. And they're starting to utilize that a little bit. They're talking about it at least. I mean, granted, we're still in the talking about phase and the what they could do and what might be, which is still fun. It's better than, not talking about anything at all.
It's called July.
It's called July.
Yeah.
But
training camp starts tomorrow, so
it's true.
We'll have something.
It's so exciting
for the Cowboys, actually. So it's perfect time to bring it up.
Oh,
nice.
Perfect. We shall see.
Yeah.
Well, I guess not perfect is segueing away from the Cowboys and going up to New York and talking about the New York Football Giants. Look, Kenny Golladay. I mean, suffice it to say he's the wide receiver 1 for the New York Giants.
Yeah,
but Sterling Shepard's still there. Darius Slayton's still there. Slayton has been coming on in recent years as being the big play guy. Shepard, when healthy, and that is a big if. He is healthy. He's viable. He's good. He's not great. He's consistent when he's on the field, which is an inconsistent thing, which is just a headache in and of itself. So that being the case, if you had a wide receiver 3 or a flex spot and you wanted to flex the New York Giants wide receiver, you're a Giants fan, you want to represent your Giants team because you're playing fantasy football and this is supposed to be a fun game. If you had to pick a wide receiver for the Giants, would you rather have Sterling Shepard in your roster or Darius Slayton, Teddy?
Well, my flex spot is probably going to be owned by J.D. McKissick, but that's 3 out of 4. I need to find one segue for Philly.
I'm fully aware of what you're doing.
I'm there. So, but no, if I'm honestly looking at flexing Shepard or Slayton, I'd rather my answer be neither, but I've had to take one. I still think Shepard is the better player than Slayton if he can be on the field. I think that an article I wrote a few months ago about Kadarius Toney, the rookie they took out of Florida. He is going to, I know we're talking about him in a second, but he is going to be a guy that is going to, in my opinion, dominate the slot. And the good thing there is that neither Shepard nor Slayton have much experience there. So he kind of already has that path. Now, Shepard did play in the slot a little bit last year before everybody jumps at me, but he didn't do a ton there. So honestly, with Kenny Golladay being there, it's going to be between Slayton and Shepard. And I think that Shepard's going to be the one that wins that until they need like a deep ball or deep plays or anything. And then they're probably going to go Slayton.
Fair enough. Speaking of Kadarius Toney, like I said, you had said you had written a forward rookie snapshot on him, which you can find at fantasyandframes.com. And I know we've been joking about these players throughout this podcast, like, oh, they're best ball relevant because everybody's relevant in best ball because you never know when they can go off. Is Kadarius Toney this season? I'm not talking about seasons to come. I'm talking about this season specifically. Is he worthy of even a best ball roster spot, Teddy?
Ew.
For dynasty purposes, I totally get where you're coming from.
Right.
But
So
we're talking this season alone.
if we're talking, I mean, with your last pick in a best ball draft, sure,
Sure,
why
okay.
not? But like, I'm not drafting him anywhere before that last spot just because we don't know how they're using him. Now, if we come out and it's week 2 of the preseason, which is, I guess, now going to be the game that most of the starters will actually play, and he's sitting there slotted, and Daniel Jones is hitting him and hitting him and hitting him, getting him 10 targets that game. Sure, take a chance, but just I don't think he's going to be the focus of the offense, even though he was the first round pick. I think they invested in the future with him so they can kind of move on from Slayton and Shepard. But it's going to be the Kenny Golladay and the Saquon Barkley show. Well, mainly reverse that. Saquon Barkley, Kenny Golladay. So I personally don't like it.
And I know I'm throwing this out of nowhere here, Nate, but like Evan Ingram, I know tight end is shallow. I know everyone's going to say take the points where you can get them. I think in the Eagles offensive article I wrote, I got to the tight end position for Dallas Goedert, and I was like, calm down. In the words of Dave Chappelle, you win by default. Is that kind of the same thing when it comes to Evan Ingram, or are we actually putting some faith into him that he can replicate his rookie season where I believe he was averaging 10 fantasy points per game at the tight end position?
I mean, he was a tight end 16 last year, and it felt like he was just non-existent ever. And so I think that's the type of production that we get. And I'd rather not. I mean, those type of players I'd like to avoid. I just don't want that crazy one big week and your entire season is built off of 2 40% point total weeks, and then the rest are nothing, just little pieces. Yes, I get it that there may be opportunity, but what's the total? I mean, what do we expect out of Daniel Jones this year? That's the biggest question, is do we expect a 4,000-yard passing season? And if that's the case, then sure, maybe Golladay, and if you have to add in the mouths to feed, but I'm still out on that. I'm out on Kadarius Toney. There's not a ton of pieces with the Giants. It's weird because I'm even now concerned with Saquon. With the whole, right. He's reluctant to say he's going to be ready, and I know that might just be talk, and we get it. But I'm the one person who I'm probably most drafting right now from the Giants happily is Devontae Booker. That's crazy to say, but I actually really like the spot where he's going in that. Talk about that last round or that one of those later round picks. Love that opportunity for that kid if the chance gives it, giving it to him. Give it.
Huh? No, I was going to say Devontae Booker. That was not a name I was going to expect hearing today. But all right, very cool. Let's stick with some IDP here in New York. Cornerback position. We can go into ad nauseum as far as like why cornerback is the bastard child of IDP. But for those who play in IDP leagues that have a cornerback specific spot, you need a cornerback. Mm-hmm. So if you had to choose between, and again, you're a Giants fan, you want to play your home team guys, Xavier McKinney or Adoree Jackson, the free agent from Tennessee. Nate, who are you taking?
I'm probably not going to take the corner who's relying upon speed coming off of a knee injury in 2020 and a foot injury in 2019. Most likely. Now, Adoree Jackson is going to be a decent option because who's on the opposite side? James Bradbury. No one's throwing James Bradbury's way. They're going to want to pepper over, not Jabril Peppers, but they're going to want to pepper Adoree Jackson his direction. But if I can go into superlative talk about Xavier McKinney, I will. He would be my J.D. McKissick conversation. My heart emoji would be popping up and whatever that is right now. I do love him. I worry also he's coming off foot surgery, which limited last year. But man, look at those the last 2 games. Just gave you that glimmer. You could glimmer of hope, and you could smell just that maybe that baking bread of deliciousness that was going to waft into your house. And it was 8 tackles and then 8 tackles and an interception against Dallas and Baltimore. And if you look at like just college production, what he did, I mean, he was second in the SEC in solo tackles. He was first in forced fumbles. He was top 10 in tackles, top 10 in interceptions. The dude can do everything. He just has to be healthy. And I can stop my rant on Xavier McKinney, the defensive side of J.D. McKissick. Oh, we could have a shirt made that has both of them. One on the front. Oh,
we'd be like that House Divided couple that has like the jersey split in half.
That's awesome.
Together since 2019 or whatever.
That was even better because we met in 2020.
Oh, yay, 2020.
which you can find at veridianglobal.com. I'll talk to
There you go.
I'll talk to Will Harris about that.
Jeremy, buy us
Thanks, Jeremy.
Speaking of Jeremy, I know he's an Eagles fan, so let's wrap up this NFC East pod talking about the Philadelphia Eagles. And you know, when I wrote the rundown this afternoon, I knew this question was going to get a scoff like Nate you just gave right there. But you know what? We got to ask the question. All right, you're an Eagles fan. You want to start guys on your team. If you had to pick one, Travis Fulgham or Jalen Reagor in redraft, who would it be and why? I'll start this one. I want the guy who's done it. Now, I don't know, maybe not has done it for a long time, but has played well to a high level at least a few times, which I say is Travis Fulgham. Jalen Reagor, I'm not sold on. I don't know what to think about Jalen Reagor, and maybe that's telling in and of itself. Nate, who would you pick in redraft, Travis Fulgham or Jalen Reagor?
I'm taking Reagor. I think Rager's.
Really?
I know that draft. Oh, absolutely. I think draft capital maybe might not mean everything, but look at the last. Look at with weeks 14, 15, 16. With who? With Jalen Hurts. What did Travis Fulgham do? He had 5 targets. That's not good. He had 11 targets over the final 6 games total, mind you, and he had 13 in one game against Pittsburgh. So yes, to start off the season super hot, and he did it against a good Pittsburgh team. I get it, but I just felt like that was everything culminating and bubbling up. Rager's, as 21st pick overall, you think that they're going to want to get him more incorporated. Not that they won't have both on the field, which is embarrassing. Sorry, Michael Bauer, if you're listening, or any Eagles fans, Jeremy, et cetera. But those are the 2 starting receivers. Not exactly thrilling. And I have Jalen Hurts in a couple different spots. So I'm hoping that both of these 2 are valuable. But Rager's 14, 15, 16 with Hurts, 19 targets, 10 receptions, 125 yards. So not the most blow you out of your chair, but better than 5.
Okay.
So,
all right.
Your turn, Teddy. Whose team are you on?
Break the tie. Who are you taking?
So,
Team Nate?
I'm actually going Team Nate.
For you, Jorge.
The reason being that, Jorge, I agree with you that Fulgham has been the one that's produced, but we've also seen him absolutely dud. And so I think that his ceiling and floor, the difference between the two is much larger, whereas Reagor is going to be the more consistent receiver. Now, all of this is banking on Jalen Hurts completing more than 51% of his passes like he did last year, 53%. So that's kind of the main issue is, do we think that happens? Because the Eagles don't even sound sold on Jalen Hurts. So sorry, Nate. It's kind of hard to be sold on him ourselves. But for me, I think, yeah, exactly. Yeah, you're just going to run the ball. But no, I would say Reagor is the one that I would rather have between the 2 of them.
Well, speaking of running the ball, let's get into the next question for Philadelphia here.
Segues for days.
I know, seriously. They have so many running backs. I feel like them and the Houston Texans have the biggest depth of the biggest running back stables in the NFL today. So, Teddy, I'll start with you. If you had to pick a running back that you were scared the most of taking away opportunity from Miles Sanders, who would that running back be for Philadelphia? And what does that question really say? Who would you rather handcuff Miles Sanders with?
Right. I'd rather handcuff J.D. McKissick with Miles Sanders.
There it is.
You worked it into all 4 teams. Congratulations.
I would do that. I said I would do it on Twitter. It happened. I'm not upset about it. No. So if we're looking at the Philadelphia Eagles depth chart to make sure we're all talking about the same people, right? So we're talking Boston Scott. We're talking Kerryon Johnson. We're talking Kenneth Gainwell. Are we talking also Jordan Howard?
Yeah, sure. He's still there.
Okay. I am actually, believe it or not, most concerned about Kenneth Gainwell. And that is just because I'm very high on him as a rookie. Now, that being said, I don't think he's going to touch the field this year. So I don't think that there's really any worry for Miles Sanders. Now, I think the only thing that's going to stop Miles Sanders is an injury or really the team's true running back, Jalen Hurts. So, between those 2, I mean, I think, there's not – between him and Boston Scott, I'm not worried about Boston Scott. We've seen what Boston Scott can handle and do when he's the lead back and it's boom or bust, So I don't think that there's going to be any consistent production there. Kenneth Gainwell is new. He's raw. He's super talented. And so, honestly, that answer is Kenneth Gainwell, but I'm not handcuffing anybody with Miles Sanders.
Fair enough. All right, let's round out our show here today talking with the Philadelphia Eagles. Best IDP stash in redraft. Josh Sweat, who came out and had a pretty decent year last year for the Philadelphia Eagles along the defensive line. Or new Philadelphia Eagle, former Washington football team player Ryan Kerrigan, who, when given the opportunity, still produced from an IDP perspective in points, but it's the opportunity thing that could be kind of a negative here. What are your thoughts on this, Nate?
Yeah, and it's the opportunity is going to be predicated on, which is weird to say with Ryan Kerrigan, health, because from 2011 to 2018, the dude never missed a game. So to call him injury prone is crazy, but the last 2 years have been cut short as a result of injury. And that's going to, be difficult because he's going to have to fight for a spot along that defensive end if they're going to rotate. And Philly rotated really well last year. It's one of the reasons why Josh Sweat, in my opinion, had such a productive kind of outpouring of defense and IDP relevance is that he, in the limited snaps. I mean, if you look at over 421 snaps, or if you go by Football Focus, it was 486 snaps. Don't know which one. There's obviously only 65 snap difference between the two, but whatever. I'm not here to talk about variance and discrimination. Doesn't matter. At the end of the day, what he did is he turned that 421 snaps into 24 solo tackles, 14 assisted tackles, 11 tackles for a loss, 6 sacks, 11 hits, and 3 forced fumbles. That is amazing. Even in hyperbole, that is crazy good for a person on limited snaps. So good that he's one of only 3 players in the NFL total that had less than 500 total snaps that produced 6 sacks. The other 2 was Andrew Van Ginkel and a guy by the name of Dennis Gardeck, who, if you're not an Arizona Cardinals fan, you probably never heard of him. He had basically 3 games that he played significant snaps being next to nothing, and he got 2 sacks in each game. If you were an IDP DFS player and you started him those weeks, you're a millionaire living in Punta Cana right now, maybe a different area. Millionaires probably live in better places than Punta Cana. You're living in Panama City right now. Woo! Hey, hanging out.
You're down on the Floribama shore.
we could have said like Miami, and that would have been.
I could have said a lot of things.
A lot of different places.
You're in Tuscaloosa, watching us right now on your 30-inch flat screen.
You know what? If you're in Tuscaloosa right now watching us on a 30-inch flat screen, thank you very much for watching.
Yeah, we appreciate it.
Not if you're a millionaire.
Well, no, if you're a millionaire, please thank you for watching and thank you for being our future sponsors.
And go to Verdine Global and buy me that hat. And me and Teddy
the divided household shirt.
So the answer to that is Josh Sweat.
I got you. I put that together. Thank you. So that's going to wrap us up here for today. Don't forget to head over to fantasyandframes.com, where we're keeping 4 eyes on the prize of getting you that fantasy football title this year and every year. Don't forget to head over there and check out all of our articles from our 4-eyed rookie snapshots, which I feel like we have like 30 plus player profiles there. Look at all our dynasty target articles there, players that you want to get on your dynasty rosters. Obviously, our 4-eyed team previews, where we're covering both offense and defense per team per day.
We have been busy. Oh my goodness.
We've been doing some stuff, for those who are participating in our charity tournament, the 4-eyed championships. Thank you. 1, 2. I love the conversations that we're having. Team Egon Spangler division. Love you guys. The draft for me has been going pretty smoothly in terms of monitoring the drafts. Everybody seems to be having a good time. So thank you very much for that. Keep up the good work there. And don't, it's crazy to say, folks, but we're, a month or so away from putting out
50 days from the start of football season.
Yeah. 4-eyed recaps and waiver wire columns and start and sits and our 4-eyed pregame show and a couple other things we got planned for you here at Fantasy and Frame. So we're amped up. We're excited. The next opportunity you'll have to see us in person will be at the Fantasy Football Expo, which I believe a majority of the Fantasy and Frames crew will be there. So we're looking very much forward to meeting all you 4-eyed fans out there. And for all those listening to us in 4th and Frames, thank you very much. Connor Dolan, if you're listening, which I know you are, thank you very much for paying for my beer and hamburger earlier today at happy hour. Much appreciated. So for Nate, for Teddy, I'm Jorge. Don't forget to check out Nate Markham at Nate Markham on Twitter, Teddy Ricketson at Teddy Ricketson on Twitter, and myself at Jorge.
Easy.
Exactly. Jorge B. Edwards on Twitter. So check us out. Ask us any questions you have. We'll be there for you. And y'all have a good night. We'll catch you next week.
Joe Piece of Peter, you're on the clock.
Draft J.D. McKissick.
Don't.
In case that wasn't painfully obvious. Okay.
Totally forgot to mention him.
JD who? Who are we talking about? Okay, just checking. Good night, folks.